I've gotten a number of comments asking if I've seen the Hannibal TV show, how I felt about Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal Lecter, how the Red Dragon storyline in the show compared to the movie versions, and I didn't have an answer for any of those questions because I hadn't seen the show until now. This video is something I've been meaning to make for a while, ever since I finished the show for the first time earlier this year. A show like this is still relatively new, so I am going to try and not spoil the general plot. I will say, if you've read the books and watched the Hannibal movies, you have a general idea of where the storyline in the show goes, but I'm going to not give any real concrete things away. I have done book-to-movie comparisons on all 4 of the Hannibal Lecter books. They're all on this channel if you want to go check them out. They're pretty good. I think they're good. Might be a little biased, but anyway, enough of me blabbing. Let's get into this. So, what did I think? The show was incredible. It's a really damn good show. How did it take me this long to see it, being a big Hannibal Lecter fan? It was way better than I was expecting, honestly. Hannibal originally aired on NBC. If you've wondered how good a Hannibal Lecter show on network television could be, then don't worry, because it was amazing. I'll give NBC credit for airing something like this because there were so many times when I was genuinely shocked how far they went with the show's level of horror, violence, blood, gore, and sexuality. I can't count the number of times I would ask, wait, this was on TV? Like regular old broadcast TV? How the hell was this on TV? Keep in mind, this was the same channel that Friends was on. I also really appreciated the show on an artistic level. It had a very unique visual style. You could tell a lot of thought was put into the presentation and editing and overall creativity of the show. This show was one of the most David Lynch-like, non-David Lynch things that I've ever seen. The scary parts were actually pretty scary. For example, the recurring vision that Will had of Hannibal represented as this demonic deer-like thing with antlers still haunts my dreams. The show's surreal visual sense became more pronounced as it went on. The best example of this I can think of were the sex scenes. They looked like a trippy kaleidoscope or something. I could honestly show clips from their artsy sex scenes on screen now, and you might not even guess it was a sex scene. YouTube's probably not even going to censor this. I hope they don't. This next section I'm calling Books versus Movies versus Shows. So an interesting comment I got on a previous Hannibal video said that the TV show is their preferred canon of the Hannibal story universe when compared to the books or movies. I'm not sure if that's 100% how I feel, but now that I've seen the show, I can totally get why someone would say that. Before I saw the show, I was wondering, is the show supposed to be a remake of the Hannibal story universe, or is it a prequel? Or is it a sequel? And after watching it, the answer to all those questions is yes and no. It completely did its own thing, and the best part was that it didn't suck. Normally, I don't enjoy when something like the show takes this degree of artistic freedom and poetic license, whatever you want to call it, of the original material that I already know and love. But the Hannibal TV show is a rare exception where the stuff they added or changed actually improves on the cohesiveness. Watching the TV show from start to finish will feel more like a unified vision than if you read the novels back to back, and especially if you watch the movies back to back. I could tell that the people who made the show actually cared about the Hannibal story universe. They put a lot of thought into picking and choosing their favorite things from this book or that movie. Surprisingly, the show took the least amount of stuff from Silence of the Lambs, which some would say is the best Hannibal book and movie. One of the biggest omissions is that Clarice Starling was not in the show. There were characters who shared similarities to Clarice, like a trainee going to interview Hannibal.
In your letter, you said you wanted to work for me.
Yes, sir.
It says here, when you graduate, you want to come to work for me in behavioral science.
Yes, very much, sir.
I'm assuming that you're familiar with the Chesapeake Ripper.
Yes. Who's the subject?
The psychiatrist, Hannibal Lecter.
Or another being groomed/hypnotized at Hannibal's remote beach house location. They would leave out something big from Silence of the Lambs, like Clarice Starling, but they would take a little detail like the story Jack Crawford tells about his wife.
We were both stationed in Italy. I was Army. She was NATO staff. All of the Italian men kept calling her Bella, Bella, Bella. Well, I wanted her to be my Bella.
Another big change the show made in terms of the pre-established Hannibal story universe was that Will Graham was the main protagonist throughout all of the storylines, whereas if you've read the books and movies, he's only really in Red Dragon/Manhunter. Speaking of this, order-wise, a big change was that the show put the Red Dragon plotline last, whereas in the book/movie story universe, that was the first, aside from Hannibal Rising. I could keep going with examples like that, but the larger point I want to make is that the Hannibal TV show's reworking and reordering of its source material was one of the most interesting and creative things about the show. Let's get to the real question. What did I think about Mads Mikkelsen as everyone's favorite cannibalistic serial killer, Hannibal Lecter? He was excellent. I loved him. No question about it. Not everyone can pull off a creepy European psychopath in that unique way that he does. Between Anthony Hopkins and Mads Mikkelsen, who's my favorite Hannibal Lecter, after watching the show, that's honestly hard to say. When I think of Hannibal Lecter, the first face that pops into my head is Hopkins's, probably because I've just known him as Hannibal for so long. I've seen some say that the Anthony Hopkins portrayal of Hannibal Lecter became too cartoony, and I get why they would say that, but I also kind of like those aspects of his character.
Have you never felt a sudden rush of panic?
In comparison, I think Mads Mikkelsen was much more of a dead serious psychopath, and I think that's the strongest aspect of his portrayal of Hannibal. Some of the scariest moments for me came when you could see him just simply watching, staring, and coldly observing the other characters. You could tell there was just darkness and total lack of empathy behind the eyes. He was not human. He loved to watch the other characters squirm and navigate through their awful situations that he was ultimately behind. It felt like he was playing a cat and mouse game with the entire world. One of my favorite lines from the whole show was when someone asked Hannibal why he did a certain thing, and his response was simply, to see what would happen.
Why?
I was curious what would happen. I was curious what would happen when I killed Marissa. I was curious what you would do.
People are just things to be manipulated for his own amusement. Another thing to consider when comparing portrayals of Hannibal Lecter is that you have to consider the mediums. Movies more or less have a time limit, so anytime Hannibal's on screen, it has to serve a purpose and move the plot along. However, 3 seasons of a TV show is simply more time to develop Hannibal and explore his character in different ways. For example, in the show, we got so many cool moments of Hannibal indulging in his favorite pastime, the culinary arts.
Before we begin, you must all be warned. Nothing here is vegetarian.
Mads was perfect at portraying this creepy, erudite, European evil culinary prick serving exotic and sometimes comically pretentious dishes to his guests.
I find a trout to be a very Nietzschean fish.
Sometimes I couldn't help but laugh in the show. Like, why is Hannibal alone at night in his own home, wearing a 3-piece suit, sitting at his dinner table, eating this like lavish meal that probably took him hours to make? It's like, who does that? If you wanted to inflict real psychological and emotional pain on Hannibal Lecter, I think the only way to do that in the show would be to serve him exclusively fast food while he's in prison. Like, just picture Hannibal's reaction if you hand him a McDonald's takeout bag with 10-piece nuggets in it and some buffalo sauce. What? I would also like to have seen what Anthony Hopkins could have done with all that extra screen time of the TV show, but that ship has sailed and you kind of have to appreciate both for what they are. So, who's the better Hannibal? They're both good in their own ways. I can't decide. Next, let's talk about Will Graham. There have been 3 actors who have portrayed Will Graham. Ed Norton did a good job. I thought he was fine, but his version was missing, or at least barely touched on, one of the key elements of Will Graham's character from the book, which was his almost superhuman ability to empathize and see things from a killer's perspective. William Peterson in Manhunter was more accurate to the book's Will Graham because they showed more of his dark empathy.
I tried to build feelings in my imagination like the killer had, so that I would know why he did what he did.
Manhunter also brought up the fact that Will Graham was a troubled person with a history of mental illness and that he had to go away for a while to, recover. But for me, Hugh Dancy takes home the prize for the best and most well-developed portrayal of Will Graham. This could be because the TV show just had more time to explore Graham's dark side as opposed to a single film, but I feel that even if you compressed all of the Hannibal TV show into just the length of a movie, Hugh Dancy would still win. I think what makes it work was the show's dark, gothic, macabre writing and just how serious Hugh Dancy was able to play the part and deliver his lines no matter how crazy the show situations were.
These aren't the Ripper's enemies, these are pests he's swatted.
The show definitely leaned into Graham's troubled mental state, which was a big part of his character. It was awesome to see how in each episode of the show we would go into Graham vision or whatever you want to call it, and we'd see his mental recreation of the crime scenes, which would always end with him saying, "This is my design." Another cool creative liberty the show took was that there was a portion of time when Graham was falsely accused of being the Chesapeake Ripper and got locked up in the mental institution where you would normally expect Hannibal to be. This clever reversal was one of the many creative flourishes that deviated the show from the source material, but elevated it and really made it its own thing. Next, let's talk about Jack Crawford. Lawrence Fishburne was great. He brought his usual gravitas to this character. Whenever this guy's on screen, you can't ignore him. He's got such a presence. Since the show ran for 3 seasons, they were obviously able to develop his character farther than they did in the movies. For example, in the show, Jack Crawford was more ruthless and on many occasions would push Will Graham harder than he probably should have to help them catch the criminals.
I am breaking the rules with you now.
By letting an unstable agent do field work?
Special agent. That means you represent the FBI.
Knowing full well that it was doing a lot of damage to his mental state.
Why are you still here when the both of us know that this is bad for you?
The books and movies touched on that a little bit, but the show made it a major plot point.
I think that the work you do here has created a sense of stability for you.
The show also made his wife, Bella, a major character, even though her tragic cancer storyline was only in the Silence of the Lambs book. Also, both Jack and Bella Crawford were in The Matrix. Just gotta mention that. Next, let's talk about Dr. Alana Bloom. She was a totally unique and original character made up for the show. If you've read the books, there actually is a character called Dr. Bloom.
And a doctor friend of mine, Dr. Bloom, asked me to get some help.
But he's Alan Bloom, and he really didn't have that big of a role. I'll definitely give the show some points for boldness here, making a totally new character. The actress portraying her, Caroline Davernas, I guess you say it, she was great. I thought she did a good job acting. However, I wasn't crazy about Alana Bloom when zooming out and looking at how she fit into the show as a whole. I feel like they bounced her character around too much. One moment she had the hots for Will, the next she had the hots for Hannibal, then later she had the hots for Margot Verger. She also worked as a psychologist helping Jack and Will catch the killers. Then one season she ran the mental institution. Then later she worked for Mason Verger and against Jack Crawford trying to catch Hannibal. It felt like every season she was written completely differently. One of the standout villains in the show for me was Mason Verger. Gary Oldman did a good job in his movie, but Michael Pitt really took this to the next level. His character was so obviously a horrible person, but I loved every moment he was on screen. Michael Pitt excelled at playing someone so evil that I even enjoyed watching him make a child cry so he could collect his tears and put it in his martini drink. I mean, come on, who does that? What?
Have a chocolate.
Without spoiling anything, I'll say that his character's end was way more brutal and accurate to the original Hannibal book than the Hannibal movie's ending was. Not going to describe all that. If you know, you know. Next, let's talk about his sister, Margot Verger. Overall, I liked what they did with Margot. I had no problem with her. She's a good person trapped in a horrible situation in life with her abusive, controlling psychopath brother. In both the book and the TV show, it was nice to see her get the happy ending that she deserved. The biggest change the show made to the Margot Verger character was her physical appearance. If you've read the Hannibal book, you know that the actress playing her did not look like she was described in the book. In the Hannibal book, Margot was described as a bodybuilder. She was really big and strong, took steroids, and at one point even had a little weightlifting competition with Barney. Oh, they left Barney out of the show. Oh, I liked Barney. I thought the guy playing Frederick Chilton did a great job. His character in the show had more to do than simply being the creepy loser who ran the mental institution who liked hitting on Clarice. My only nitpick is that I felt like the guy playing Chilton in the movies looked more like the Chilton I pictured in my mind when I was reading the books, but that's just a minor complaint. Dr. Bedelia Du Maurier was another totally original character made up for the show, played by Gillian Anderson. She was another psychiatrist, and she was actually the doctor that Hannibal Lecter himself was a patient of. More or less, they had a weird relationship. Gillian Anderson's a good actress. I've seen her in other things. X-Files was great. I believed her in this role. She sold the part. But I'll be honest and say that I really wasn't crazy about this original character. She always just seems so anesthetized and cold and slow and distant.
Don't fool yourself into thinking he's not in control of what's happening.
I know that's what they were going for, as she was basically under Hannibal's spell the whole time, but I never really got excited when her scenes came up. Freddie Lounds, the scummy reporter, is a traditionally male role in the Hannibal story universe, but they made Freddie a girl here. After the initial brief confusion of, oh, that's Freddie, oh, okay, I really didn't notice or care because the actress, she nailed the role as this totally skeevy tabloid reporter. She was excellent. A big change for her character was that while the show did have the iconic scene of the burning wheelchair barreling into the parking garage, it was done in a different context. It was part of a larger plot that was going on. I don't want to spoil it, but I thought it was integrated pretty well, even though it was different than the source material. In conclusion, should you see the show? Would I recommend it? Yes, absolutely. I loved it. Even if you're not that familiar with the Hannibal books or movies, it's just a really well-made TV show. But definitely watch the show if you are already a fan of the Hannibal books and movies, because it is a pleasantly refreshing and creative take on some of the characters and plot lines that you're already familiar with. You may even find that the show is more cohesive and that the seasons connect and flow into one another better than if you just consumed the Hannibal movies or books back to back. That's about all I've got for today. If you made it to this point in the video, Thank you for sticking around. I appreciate it when people watch to the end, as always, so good job. That one's for you. All right. What else have I got left to cover about Hannibal Lecter? I did all the books, all the movies, did the TV show. There's that other show called Clarice that's just one season. I don't know if it was any good or not. I don't think Hannibal's in the show, though. Why am I going to watch a Hannibal show if Hannibal's not in it, you know? All right, that's enough for me. Goodbye.